When you think of the apex predators of the sky, your mind likely goes to the familiar: the bald eagle, the Andean condor, creatures bound by the known laws of modern biology and physics. If you look further back, perhaps you think of the prehistoric, extinct giants trapped safely in the fossil records. And if you look into the darkest corners of human history, you find the mythological, gods of the storm, monsters of the air, dismissed by modern science as campfire stories designed to frighten children. We find comfort in these clear categories: science, history, myth. It makes our world feel safe, predictable, and fully understood. But what happens when those lines blur? What happens when a creature that strictly belongs in a textbook of ancient mythology suddenly appears in the sky above a quiet, modern American suburb? On a warm summer evening, a town of fewer than 200 people was forced to answer that exact question, and the scientific community has been struggling to explain it ever since. Long before modern aviation mapped the airspace above North America, the historical records of the continent's indigenous populations documented a persistent biological anomaly in the sky. Across hundreds of distinct cultures, separated by thousands of miles and diverse languages, a singular motif emerges with startling consistency: the existence of a colossal avian predator. In mainstream anthropological studies, this entity is categorized under the umbrella term of the Thunderbird. Modern academia often reduces these accounts to mythological allegories, symbols created by pre-industrial societies to explain the terrifying power of severe thunderstorms. However, a closer examination of the original oral histories and physical artifacts suggests a different narrative. These were not described as ethereal spirits. They were documented as tangible, flesh and blood apex predators. To understand the gravity of these historical claims, one must look at the physical evidence left behind. Along the limestone cliffs of the Mississippi River, near Alton, Illinois, the Illinois people documented a massive creature they called the Piasa bird. Early European explorers, such as Jacques Marquette in 1673, recorded seeing these massive murals painted on the bluffs. The creature was depicted not as a standard bird, but as an airborne leviathan with reptilian features and a wingspan large enough to cast a shadow over an entire hunting party. For centuries, as European colonization spread and industrialized the landscape, these indigenous records were systematically dismissed. The scientific community of the 18th and 19th centuries categorized the Thunderbird alongside dragons and sea serpents, fictional constructs born from human imagination. The skies were conquered, mapped, and deemed safe. The apex predators of the air were relegated to the pages of folklore. But the inherent flaw in dismissing historical records as mere myth is the assumption that human knowledge of the natural world is absolute. As zoology advanced, species once thought to be mythical, such as the giant squid or the mountain gorilla, were eventually proven to be biological realities. Yet, the concept of a massive undiscovered bird of prey remained firmly in the realm of impossibility. That is, until the summer of 1977, when the historical precedent suddenly and violently manifested in the modern era. The classification of these creatures as pure mythology was severely challenged not in an isolated, unexplored wilderness, but in the heart of the American Midwest. Lawndale, Illinois, in 1977, was a small, quiet agricultural community. It was a place characterized by predictable routines, vast cornfields, and a tight-knit population of fewer than 200 residents. It was the last place on Earth one would expect a cryptozoological anomaly to occur. The documentation of the event begins on the evening of July 25th. According to the official timeline compiled by local authorities and later analyzed by investigative journalists, the anomaly began shortly after 8 p.m. The conditions were typical for a Midwestern summer evening: clear visibility and calm weather. Multiple independent witnesses, including adults with no prior connection to one another, reported observing an unusual disruption in the sky. 2 exceptionally large, dark-colored birds were seen flying at a dangerously low altitude over the residential grid. Observers noted 2 highly irregular characteristics. First, the sheer mechanical silence of their flight, lacking the typical sound of wings beating against the air. And second, a wingspan that far exceeded any native species recorded in the state's wildlife database. The anomaly escalated from a visual sighting to a physical altercation within minutes. The focal point of the incident was the backyard of the Lowe family residence. 10-year-old Marlon Lowe, who weighed approximately 70 pounds, was playing outside. Without any audible warning, one of the 2 aerial entities broke its flight pattern and initiated a steep predatory dive. Witness testimonies, documented in police reports and subsequent sworn statements, detailed a biomechanical impossibility. The creature extended its talons and made direct contact with the child. It did not merely strike him, it clamped onto his clothing and physical frame. With a display of aerodynamic power that defies modern ornithological understanding, the bird achieved lift. The 70-pound boy was lifted completely off the ground. He was carried horizontally through the air, his feet dangling feet above the grass for an estimated distance of 40 feet. The abduction was only aborted due to the immediate and hysterical intervention of the boy's mother, Ruth Lowe. Hearing the commotion, she ran into the yard screaming. Observers hypothesized that the sudden acoustic shock startled the creature, causing it to release its payload. The bird dropped the child and ascended rapidly, joining its partner before disappearing into the evening sky toward a nearby creek. The Lowe family went to the police that night. They were laughed out of the precinct. One officer reportedly said, and this is documented in Ruth Lowe's own account. Now let me get this straight. A giant bird attacked your nephew? By the next morning, the story had broken to the press. The family became a spectacle. Marlon returned to school to find he had a new name, Bird Boy. Dead pigeons were thrown onto the Lowe family's porch. Neighbors who had personally witnessed the event quietly withdrew their statements, not because their memory had changed, but because in a town this small, ridicule has a face. The Lowe family made no money from this. They sought no fame. They had every reason to go silent. They never did. What the press did not report, Lawndale was not an isolated incident. 3 days after July 25th, a farmer in McLean County, with no knowledge of the Lowe case, reported 2 enormous black birds flying over his property. A mail driver named James Majors spotted them between Armington and Delavan. Then came reports from Tremont, from Bloomington, from Odin. The documented sightings continued until August 11th, 1977. None of these witnesses knew each other. All of them described the same bird, coal-black body, white ring at the neck, wingspan that dwarfed anything in the regional wildlife record. The official scientific response was misidentification, a turkey vulture, or perhaps an escaped Andean condor. but an Andean condor is not native to North America. By 1977, the California condor, its closest relative, was nearly extinct. And more critically, the anatomical structure of a condor's feet makes it physically incapable of gripping and transporting significant weight. They are scavengers, not predators. Marlin Lowe weighed 65 pounds. No known living bird in North America can generate the lift required to carry that weight into sustained horizontal flight. That is not speculation. That is aerodynamics. Witness James D. Daniels, who was present at the Lowe residence that evening, later told the Freeport Journal-Standard that he had desperately wanted to find a rational explanation for what he saw. He could not find one. The 1977 wave did not end in August. In December of that year, a woman driving to work on a rural road near Lawndale saw something standing in the middle of the road. She described it as looking like a man with something draped over both arms. She collapsed. She was hospitalized. When local men went to investigate, they found a large bird. They killed it. Then, fearing the same ridicule that had followed the Lowe family for months, they burned the body before anyone could examine it. Physical evidence, once again, was destroyed before science could respond. Researchers, including cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, who documented the full 1977 Illinois wave, have pointed to the teratorn, a genus of massive predatory birds from the Pleistocene epoch, as the closest biological match for what witnesses described. Wingspans exceeding 15 feet, active aerial predators, not scavengers. The scientific consensus says they went extinct 10,000 years ago. 7 witnesses, physical evidence, a statewide pattern of sightings, a body found and burned. The Lawndale anomaly remains unresolved, not because the evidence is thin, but because the conclusion it points toward is one that science is not prepared to accept. The sky is not empty. It is merely waiting.